In less than 2 weeks, ballots will arrive in every mailbox in the state of California for the March 2024 primary. And as we head into this election season, the latest polling shows California voters are not very happy with the Democrat supermajority. We got that and more coming right up. I'm Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California, and the March 2024 primary is literally weeks away. In the next 2 weeks, you'll start seeing ballots arrive in your mailbox because we have an all mail-in election, and that, again, is absurd. We should not be doing all mail-in elections, particularly in the state of California where they don't maintain their voter rolls. But as we head into this election season and this entire pivotal election year, the polling continues to send alarm bells to California Democrats. Voters of all stripes are not happy with the state of affairs in California. And we've seen this not just from one poll, but multiple polls across the state. Independents and Democrats are souring on the Democrat supermajority, and they're thinking that the state of California is on the wrong track. Republicans already got the memo years ago. They always knew that California was on the wrong track. But every single poll that's been coming out in the past 4 or 5 months, even Newsom's approval ratings, which have been tanking as people wake up to his failures and corruption, every poll is signaling that voters are ready for change. They're hungry for change. They're not happy with the direction of the state of California. The only problem here, as you and I both know, is that the California Republican Party can't find its ass with a search party and a map. They snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And that's why Reform California exists. We believe that the Republican Party isn't going to save us in the state of California, that Republican elected officials are too inept or cowardly or too few in terms of the principled ones to actually lead the rebellion and take back our state. We've got to do it among the grassroots. We have to create the parade down the road, and the politicians will find a way to get to the front of the parade and claim that they did it all along, that they created it. And so let me get to this poll real quick. Voters say California's budget deficit is an extremely serious problem, poll finds. And this is interesting because voters on fiscal matters tend to, it's green eye shade. Okay. It's not like, oh my goodness, we have to balance the budget. In terms of voters, I think we should balance the budget. I think any rational person out there would think so as well. But voters are accustomed to the free lunch. Remember, the Democrats have been giving them the free lunch for years, promising them that, oh, no problems will come. We'll kick the can down the road. It's going to be fine. And so voters have kind of become accustomed to that somewhere there's a credit card, there's a bond, there's going to be borrowing, and that's okay. Someone else gets to pay for it. The rich people will have to pay for it, when in fact it always gets put on the backs of the little guy. But what's interesting about this poll is that a budget issue is now popping above, 50%. It says 57% of the state of the voters think the state is headed in the wrong direction, and more than half of California voters think that the budget is an extremely serious problem. And this comes on the heels of Gavin Newsom finally admitting that we are in a sea of red ink, a $68 billion budget shortfall. Now, that has not caused him to pump the brakes on spending or any of his other liberal progressive Democrats that control the state government. In fact, they continue to give illegal immigrants free health care at your expense, and that's $7 to $10 billion. So these people give drunken sailors a run for their money on spending. So $68 billion is the shortfall. When asked how to deal with the deficit, this is pretty important. 51% of voters, according to this poll, and by the way, the poll is the Berkeley IGS poll. And you might say, Berkeley liberal. The two polls in California that are pretty well respected are PPIC and IGS Berkeley. They tend to be left leaning. Okay, so I don't always buy everything they have to say. They tend to skew to the left, which is why this result is even more remarkable. That even in a left tilting poll, people are fiscally concerned, fiscally conservative. So in the Berkeley IGS poll, a majority of voters, 51%, say they want cuts to government services. Only 35% want to raid the rainy day fund. 17% want to raid special funds. And taxes, only 13% want to raise taxes. The message is sinking in. We are converting people. Even most of the Democrats think that it's a crazy idea to be raising taxes in California on working families. They know that the cost of living is too much. And so I just got to say that this is, again, the warning sign for Democrats. And it's an opportunity sign for you and me, those of us who've been fighting to try to open the eyes of California voters and get them to vote differently. I think 2024, if we play our cards right, if we work hard, if we organize, if we are strategic, if we're focused, if we have good leadership, we can flip seats and make progress in rebalancing the politics in our state. The idea of tax increases completely off the table. Now, Newsom's approval rating is still real bad. Only 46% approve of him. That is way down from the 60% range he was in just a year ago today. 47% disapprove of his performance as governor. So a net -1 on unfave on performance. So we've got a lot of opportunity here. That's where Reform California comes in. We are leading the fight. Check out the website, reformcalifornia.org, where we focus on the stories that independent voters and even some conservative Democrats would be interested in hearing about, whether it's voter ID or the budget deficit or the release of sex offenders or the crime wave or securing the border, which is a great popular issue with Republicans, independents, and even a lot of Democrats have woken up to the fact that this is just crazy. It's insanity. We need your help to get the message out to voters, particularly as they're getting their ballots in the next 2 weeks. Go to reformcalifornia.org and chip in a contribution. Right now, we're trying to raise money for our election guide, our plain English voter guide. If you go on our website to reformcalifornia.org and you click under voter guide, you'll find a voter guide, the plain English voter guide that breaks down the ballot measures and all the candidate races, all the way from Congress, all the way down to school board, judge races, local city council races. We grade candidates, we evaluate candidates, and we give you the plain English description of the ballot measures so that you can vote confidently. You know what you're voting on. I think if people know what they're voting on, they vote pretty common sense. So go online, reformcalifornia.org, chip in a contribution there, help us mail and advertise, get the voter guides into the hands of the voters before they cast their ballots. And of course, check out the campaigns so that you can help us with these fights in 2024. I wanted to talk about two other stories real quick, very briefly. First and foremost, on the voter guide, yesterday we launched our No on One campaign with a rally in San Diego. Proposition 1 is deceptive. It says it's going to solve homelessness. It won't. It actually raids funding for treatment programs for homeless people. It raids funding for treatment programs and diverts the money in the form of bonds for subsidies to be given to rich developers to build government welfare housing units in your neighborhood. It eliminates your right to vote against government welfare housing in your neighborhood. That takes a constitutional right. Prop 1 takes a constitutional right away from you on these boondoggle projects that they bring a lot of crime and grime into the neighborhood. So check out the website, cleanupourstreets.org. That's our campaign site. And if you could share it with your friends and family, that would be wonderful. We give you the top 5 reasons to vote no on Prop 1. Diverts funding from treatment programs for homeless. It gives wasteful subsidies to rich developers. It's billions in more taxpayer debt at a time when we face that big budget deficit that voters are concerned about. It locks in the failed homeless policies that do not allow us to hold homeless accountable for their bad behavior or for getting on top of their drug addiction or their mental health problem. And as I just mentioned, it eliminates your voting rights. Go to cleanupourstreets.org, share that website, chip in a contribution so that we can get the word out. Another story, California City struggles to recruit police despite highest in the nation signing bonus. They're desperate. This is from Fox 11, which, by the way, Fox 11 does pretty good work as local stations go. I'm a big fan of one of their reporters there, Alex Michelson, who's very fair. He doesn't just go with the Democrat party line. Check out his show. But here it's talking about the Alameda Police Department offering, are you ready for this? A $75,000 signing bonus for officers. That's on top of a $113,000 base starting salary. And of course, with specialty pay and bonus pay, it's much higher. Now, don't get me wrong. We need police officers and we need to compensate them well. They put their lives on the line for you and me and our public safety. But money is not going to be the only solution here. If you smear the reputation of policing and police officers and law enforcement, nobody's going to want to take the job. That's the bigger issue here, is that we have so mistreated law enforcement in the state of California. They're not valued by our elected officials. They're smeared by our elected officials. They're called racists. The governor and mayors and city council members and politicians on the left call them brute thugs, racists, abusing or illegitimately using force. When you do that, nobody wants to work in policing in the state where they're being besmirched. Also, California was the only state, we're the only state in the nation that has changed the liability standards for policing so that now a police officer can go to jail for use of force if it wasn't, quote, necessary. Now, every other state has a statute that says use of force will be evaluated after the fact to see if it was, quote, reasonable given the circumstance the officer was in. By changing the law in California on use of force reviews and liability to necessary, we're now doing armchair quarterbacking. We are doing hindsight 2020, and you can't put police officers in that position. They don't know everything when they're going into a bad situation. They have to rely on what they know and what they perceive in the moment. We train them to make good judgment, and that's what we should hold them accountable to. The judgment given what they know at the time, not was it necessary. It's just absurd. So officers are voting with their feet. They're leaving the state. I hear from chiefs of police from across the country. They say, Carl, thank you for sending us your best and brightest. It's amazing. We are losing good officers. We train them here. And then all that training investment gets washed away when they go to another police department or sheriff's department in another state. The signing bonus is not the issue. Compensation is really not the issue. The issue is the maltreatment of police officers. One final point, I want to give a shout out to Richard Ryder, a good friend of mine. He's in San Diego. He's president of the San Diego County Tax Fighters. And he put out something on the Newsom budget that I think is worthy of your consideration, because the media won't point this out. Newsom, this is from a news story that he's quoting, quote, Newsom is touting that his budget won't reduce the amount of per pupil spending, $23,519 per student. Imagine that. We're spending $23,519 per student, and yet we have the worst schools in the nation. It's astounding. Now, the reason why the per student number is deceptive in Newsom's budget is that we are losing students as people flee the state of California. We've had a major reduction in the average daily attendance at public schools in California as parents take their kids out of the public schools because of the controversial curriculum and the bad policies and the far left agenda, or they take their kids out of the school because they're moving to another state where they can afford to live and can be safe enough to be comfortable. The per pupil spending numbers are going to be misleading when Newsom says, oh, I'm not cutting education. Again, I think that the bigger issue is we need to reform education. It's not the money we're throwing at it. It is the lack of oversight, lack of accountability, the lack of focus on the fundamentals, reading, writing, and arithmetic versus the social agenda and political agendas. So, by the way, Ryder also puts out this stat from the internet that he got. The average private school tuition in California is $16,719 per year. Private elementary school average tuition cost is $15,896. High school is $21,910. What was that number per student? $23,519. We're paying more for failing public schools than people have to pay for private tuition at a private school. Give parents the money, let them make their choice, and that is the best sanitizer for incompetence and failing schools. All right, that does it for us. I want you to share this video. Please like and subscribe to this channel and chip in again a contribution to reformcalifornia.org to power the fight. Until next time, Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Reform California. Help us break through the censorship of the liberal media. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and smash that notification button so you can stay up to date on all the developments in California news and politics. Also, please visit the website, reformcalifornia.org, for ongoing news coverage and to join one of our campaigns in the fight to take back our state. If you can, please sign up as a volunteer or chip in a contribution. This episode of Reform California with Carl DeMaio, paid for by Carl DeMaio for State Assembly 2024.